Hi, it's Steph, and I'm at Lowe's, and they have lots of pumpkins and fall decor, as well as perennials and shrubs, which are perfect for some fall planting. So let's go ahead and take a look at the late September inventory at Lowe's. When it comes to perennials, our options are starting to get limited as we head into the end of September, but there are still about 4 perennials that are really great to add for late season color that will lead you into fall. One of them is this really pretty rudbeckia here. It looks like the prairie sun, but it's actually called Sunbeckia Ophelia rudbeckia. It is a perennial for full sun. It says it's upright, comes back year after year, $24.98 for these containers, and they are hardy to a zone 7. So I am here in a zone 6B, 7A, and they're only hardy from 10 to 0 degrees Fahrenheit. So I would say that these are borderline for us here, and I would likely treat these as an annual and not expect them to return, which at $24.98 is kind of expensive to take that kind of risk, but they are really cheery and pretty. And here is a really beautiful perennial that blooms in the fall. This is the Montauk daisy. So if you like the Shasta daisy that blooms in the summer and you want something that is a daisy flower that will bloom in your late summer, early fall, this is a great option. Now, something to keep in mind about the Montauk daisy is that it does have the tendency to get woody. So you sort of have to treat these like a shrub. But when these are done blooming, you want to cut them down all the way to about maybe 4 to 6 inches at most. And then they will start pushing out new growth at some point in late spring, early summer. And then what you can do is right before 4th of July, you will do something called the Chelsea chop. You will cut it down again and to maybe, I would say at that point, maybe just about by half. And then they will be a little bit more upright and less leggy, and they will develop less woody stems, which will keep your plant looking in good shape a lot longer. But this here is called Montauk daisy, also known as the Nippon daisy. And it is an upright perennial for full sun. They will do better in more sun, so they will even flop less if you give them plenty of light. They're hardy to a zone 5 or down to negative 10 degrees Fahrenheit, and they get to be 24 to 36 inches in height, and they need 18 to 24 inch spacing. And they are deer resistant. I find that the deer do not touch them in my garden. I will say that I find that this is a little bit expensive for this perennial, which is pretty common, $17.98. They are available here, but more than likely you'll be able to find a gardening friend that can share some of theirs with you. And some coneflowers. Now this variety of echinacea is called the Cheyenne Spirit. And what's great about this one is that you'll get multiple color blooms on just one plant. So you might get some that are red and orange and yellow, sometimes pink and even cream. And this one here looks really healthy and in great shape with tons of bloom buds. Now, as long as we don't get an early frost, they should still bloom for you. And these are a really pretty perennial. Now, the only thing that coneflowers need to be happy is full sun and a very well draining soil. If you have soil that stays moist, they can rot at the crown and then you can lose your plant. So give them a really well draining soil in full sun and they'll do really well. So here it is, the Cheyenne Spirit. These are $15.98. They are perennial, hardy to a zone 4, down to negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit, and they get to be 24 to 36 inches in height and 18 to 24 inches in width. They are deer resistant. I don't find that the deer touch them in my garden, probably because the cone is a little bit spiky, but the bunnies do like to chew on the lower pieces of the plant, so the foliage and the bloom buds. So something to be aware of and maybe protect them if you do deal with bunnies in your garden. Some shrubs. Now this is one of my favorite shrubs, and this is the gold mop cypress, also known as the threadleaf fall cypress. And you can see how it has a really beautiful shape there, kind of cascading, has a really nice ferny kind of graceful type foliage, and this golden color. Now, in order for it to have this really bright golden color, you want to give it lots of sun. If it gets shaded, it'll start getting a bit more green, like you see on the undersides of the foliage that doesn't get much sun. These are about an average size shrub, I would say, getting to be anywhere from 3 to 5 feet tall and wide. There we go. And they're hardy down to a zone 4 or negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit, so very hardy. The deer and rabbit do not touch it in my garden, and I had one that got a little bit too big for its space. I had it in one of my flower borders, and so what I did was I limbed it up into a small topiary tree, and I can link that video below. But lots of options with these really pretty shrubs, and they offer a lot of color in your winter garden. And as we're heading into those colder months, it's always nice to have evergreen interest, so there is something to look at all year. And a couple more really pretty foliage perennials that you can use in either shade or part shade. And this is some heuchera and heucherella. So this one here is the heucherella, and you can see how beautiful it looks with that dark foliage heuchera right behind it. So these would make a really pretty combination in either a fall inspired container or even out in the landscape. I love to use perennials in a container because then when you're done with them in the container, you can move them over to your landscape. So they serve dual purpose. So this here is the Proven Winners Fun and Games I Spy Heucherella. It can deal with part shade, and it is a perennial. These are $12.98, and it is short in stature at only 8 to 10 inches in height. Needs 16-inch spacing, and it is hardy in zones 4 through 9 or down to negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit. These make a great companion plant with things like a stilby or even hosta, but I really love this light green with this dark veining, which contrasts really nicely with this one here. Now this coral bell is in the Lowe's house brand container, and it is called the Timeless Night. And you can see that it does send up bloom stalks similar to hosta, and even the heucherella you can see here will send up these bloom stalks at some point during the growing season. Does it tell us when it blooms? Late spring to early summer. So when they send these up, you can leave them for some color. The pollinators really like them, or you can cut them off and just have them as a mound of foliage. And this one likes shade. It's hardy to a zone 4 down to negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit, and they get to be 8 to 10 inches in height and 16 to 18 inches in width, and they are deer resistant. I do find that the deer and bunnies mostly leave my heucheras alone, and they stay mostly evergreen, meaning that you will have a little mound of foliage throughout the winter. The leaves do get a little burnt and tattered, but then you always have new foliage kind of shooting up at the base of the plant. So another really great perennial. And another color heuchera, this one has more of a red coloring. And you can see, again, with the backdrop of that dark foliage and that green foliage, how you can add a lot of visual interest and color to a shady spot with just the use of foliage. Now, this one is called Lava Lamp Coral Bells. It also likes shade. So 1 to 3 hours of morning sun is as much as it would like. And it is perennial. These are $8.98. You can see the size on this one. This one gets to be 16 to 36 inches in height, so it's a little bit taller, and 28 inches in width. Also deer resistant. They do benefit from some fertilizing. So in the spring, so very early spring, I like to go through and give my plants a feed with some fertilizer. You can use something like a granular, which is slow release. So every time it rains, the plant will get fed. And I like the Espoma plant tone for that. Here's the fertilizer I was talking about that I like to feed my perennials with. It is the Espoma Organic Plant Tone. It says for organic gardening and grows bigger blooms, and it's all natural and long lasting. They have it here in an 8-pound bag for $14.98. Well, this was a surprise. I don't know about you. I'm not quite ready to put up a tree. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And some more beautiful evergreen shrubs. Here's another one of my favorites that is very easily found at the local box store or garden center, and it is a blue star juniper. Look at this gorgeous blue coloring. Now this little browning that you see here, completely normal. This happens to mine, and I've had them in my garden for about 12 years now. You can very easily just clean up the shrub. Most evergreens and conifers will have something called winter shed. So you will see some of those browning needles on the interior of your plant that is very easy to just clean up and move away. And this one here is a very compact, low-growing evergreen in this gorgeous blue color. I have mine in the front of the border, which is the perfect application for this because it stays nice and low. So these shrubs only get to be about 3 to 4 feet in diameter, and mine have only grown about 18 inches in height. They do like full sun in order to have this really beautiful, vibrant blue coloring. And they combine so well with other plants and perennials in your borders. These are $21.98 for this 1.71 gallon. And it says here the size 2 to 3 feet in height, 3 to 4 feet in width. I would say it's a little bit lower than that in height, at least in my experience. They're hardy to a zone 4 or down to negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit, and they are deer resistant, which I can vouch for because we deal with lots of deer in my garden and they have not touched them. And they have a mounding habit. And you can see how beautiful this blue color looks with yellow perennials and green foliage. Really gorgeous. And this here is the Fire Chief Arborvitae, which I have 2 in my garden that I added a couple of seasons ago, and I absolutely love it. So in the spring, it gets really vibrant, kind of yellow chartreuse needles and foliage. And then as we head into the cooler months, it starts taking on kind of like this pink coloring before going a shade of bronze. They almost have a bit of a bronzy or red appearance. Let me show you the tag here. There might be a picture of it. There you go. Eventually the whole shrub will kind of look that color, and it looks really cool in the winter landscape. They're pretty compact and they have sort of a rounded growth habit, and they like full sun. So they get to be 4 by 4 in size, and they're hardy in zones 5 through 8. Bright gold spring foliage, deep red fall color, and slow growing. The Fire Chief Arborvitae. And these are 1 gallons for $16.98. And lots of boxwood options. Now, you know what another really great use for boxwood is, or any evergreen for that matter? Containers. So if you are at the point where you are removing your summer annuals and your containers are now bare, you can go ahead and plant a shrub in it, something like an evergreen that will give you winter color, will look beautiful around the holidays. You can even put some lights on them, and then you can underplant it with things like pansies come spring. And once you're done with using them in your containers, you can find a home for them out in the landscape. So this is the green velvet boxwood. You can see here it has a bunch of marigolds in the front of it, forming a hedge. Now you can trim these into any shape that you would like, either into a hedge, a topiary, ball, etc. And this variety here, the green velvet, gets to be 3 to 4 feet in height, 3 to 4 feet in width, and it is hardy to a zone 4. We're down to negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit. They are deer resistant, and this is a type of evergreen that can grow in part sun or sun. So a lot of times you have a hard time finding evergreens that can deal with a little bit of a shadier spot or a part sun spot. Boxwood is a good option. And an evergreen that will give you beautiful blooms in spring, rhododendron, and they have this glossy broadleaf foliage. You can see this one's already loading up with some buds. And these are great understory shrubs, which means you want to plant them under the canopy of like a deciduous tree so that they will get sun in the winter months to help form all of their bloom buds. And then they will get shaded once those trees kind of fill in with leaves during the hottest part of the season. And that is how they will do best, but they're really great. I find that the deer sometimes like to eat the buds. So at the point where the buds start to swell, you might want to spray them with something like liquid fence, deer and rabbit, to help keep your buds intact. But these are shrubs that can grow over time. They're really slow growing, I find, but they last a really long time, and just a really beautiful kind of backdrop type shrub. They have a couple of varieties here. This one is the Borsalt rhododendron. It looks like it has a pink bloom. It says that it likes part sun. 3 to 6 hours of morning sun is ideal, and they will bloom in spring, summer. Mine blooms somewhere around Memorial Day, and they get to be 5 by 5 in height and in width. But like I said, over time, which they are slow growing, they can get much larger than that. And they're hardy down to a zone 4 or negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit, so very hardy. And these are $26.98. And they have a couple of other colors. There is a smaller container here, which would be a lot easier to plant. And this is a white variety. So Chinoids white, really pretty as well. And this container here is $15.98. It's a 1 gallon, and same requirements. This one gets a little bit larger. It says it gets 8 feet in height, 6 feet in width, also hardy down to a zone 4 or negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit. Some Rosa Sharon that is still blooming in this beautiful purple color with a deep red throat. These are proven winners, and the variety is the purple pillar. Now they have the purple pillar, the white pillar, although they only have the purple pillar in stock, but it is another variety that's available. And what's cool about these is that they grow really kind of tall and upright, but not too wide. So you can kind of tuck this anywhere. And so these get to be 10 to 16 feet in height and 2 to 3 feet wide. And they are hardy in USDA growing zones 5 through 9 or down to negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit. So it says they are very narrow, heat tolerant, and durable. They provide summer interest, so they bloom, it looks like, maybe at some point in mid to late summer. And they like full sun. Look at that. Very pretty. And these are 2 gallon containers for $27.98. And this crepe myrtle, which we looked at a couple of weeks ago, is still holding on to some of its blooms. Now, I really love the dark foliage on this. And crepe myrtles were not something that we would see often here at the garden center until this year, actually, because where I am located, my zone just got updated from a zone 6B to a 7A. And these are only hardy to around a zone 6. So they were always kind of risky in our area to plant these. If we had a particularly cold winter or a very late kind of cold snap or deep freeze, a lot of times you would lose some of of your crepe myrtles. They could die back to the ground or lose it completely. But this is a really pretty shrub that can either grow as a large shrub or limbed up into a small multi-trunk tree. And it is something that I am going to consider adding to my garden next season for that late season bloom. And I really like this dark foliage too. So this one here is the crepe myrtle center stage. The color is red. It's $28.98 in an almost 2-gallon container by Proven Winners. I love the dark foliage, and they come in center stage red, coral, and pink. So this one here reads coral, crepe myrtle. And you can see that it likes sun, and it is hardy in zones 6 through 10, or down to -5 degrees Fahrenheit. 6 to 12 feet tall, 8 feet wide. Colorful foliage, disease resistant, which is great because crepe myrtles I've read can also be susceptible to some kind of mildew. And look at how pretty that is. Gorgeous. They also have some bulbs here. These are the fall planted spring blooming bulbs. I will tell you that they do not have as much selection as the Home Depot had when we were there last week, but there is one that became a favorite of mine that I've planted in my garden a couple of times now. And the reason I've done that is because I find that the bloom gets smaller in the subsequent years. But this is a really pretty one if you want to try it in your garden. It is called the Allium Christophi. It has such a large bloom with these little star-shaped flowers, and it's very airy and just really cool looking. They are shorter in stature than some of the other alliums, but you get 6 bulbs for $4.98, and I think they're really cool and a fun allium to grow. So that's what they look like. And it says that you want to plant bulbs per square foot 3. So that's what I did actually. This is a 6-pack. So what I did was I put a group of 3 and another group of 3 on either side of a planting bed. And it was really cool. And then they have things like crocus and daffodils as well as some tulips. And so some of the variety of tulips that they have is this Dafeng one that is an orange color. They also have some of the traditional yellow daffodils as well as the mixed varieties, and there is a colorful tulip mix. And some purple and white, purple and yellow, and then traditional red ones. Now, when it comes to planting tulips, they are not always reliably perennial. So tulips is a plant that, one, the deer and rabbits love it. The squirrels are likely to dig up your bulbs as soon as you plant them. So it's something you have to be really vigilant about in order to get these beautiful blooms. I have more luck planting them in containers, and I do have a video on my channel that I can link below on how to do that. But this here, you can see tulip, Darwin, hybrid red. So anytime you see Darwin, usually these types of tulips will return again. The same here with this yellow, red, and pink mix, Darwin hybrid mix. So the hybrids, the Darwins rather, are more reliably perennial when it comes to your tulips. And here you get 30 bulbs for $14.98 of the red. And here's another variety of allium that I've grown for several years now. It is the Purple Sensation. Now, this is one of the first alliums that come up in my garden at some point in May, and they come up with the iris, the bearded iris, which is really pretty. You're getting 18 bulbs for $14.98. And in order to get these blooms to kind of be nice and robust for you every year, you should go in late winter and give them a fertilizing with some kind of bulb tone in the area that you know you have these growing. But these you can plant, they're a smaller bulb. So you can plant probably, I would say, about 5 per square foot. It does tell you 9 bulbs per square foot, but the more you plant together, the more impactful it is. And these are also really pretty. So if you're looking for some spring blooming bulbs that are deer and rabbit resistant, allium is a great option. Grape hyacinth, the regular variety of hyacinth, because they have a fragrance, they tend to stay away from them. And daffodils, always deer and rabbit resistant. But tulips are usually not and would require a little bit more work on your end to keep them intact and beautiful until they bloom. And this beautiful shrub is called a Leucothea, and I planted one of these in my garden last year, and it is called Rainbow. Now, these do like to have a little bit more shade than what they're getting here, and I know that because the one in my garden did the same thing when they got too much sun. They start to crisp up a little bit. So these, in my opinion, are a part sun, part shade shrub, but they have really beautiful color on this new growth. See that? The stems almost look pink, and then they have this variegated kind of creamy yellow and green foliage, just really pretty. Now, this one is a Monrovia shrub, and it is called the Leucothea Rainbow Drooping. It says part sun, dramatic foliage, multi-season beauty. So Monrovia is saying that it is a part sun shrub. It just happens to be here on display in full sun, which is why you see a little bit of burning. And The size on these says that it's average size, slowly reaching 3 to 5 feet tall and wide, and can be clipped to 2 feet tall. And it blooms in spring, so it looks like it gets some blooms, and part sun. So really cool shrub. Now I have mine planted kind of in a woodland area of my garden, and the deer did nip on it a little bit, but I've had some people tell me that they are generally deer resistant in their garden. So I think it just depends on what your deer like to eat. And this beautiful evergreen here, which is a type of hinoki, this is the golden hinoki false cypress by Monrovia, has dramatic foliage colors. This is dramatic accent multi-season beauty, and it likes full or part sun. Now because it has this golden color, if it gets a little bit more sun, it will be happier. You can give it, say, like a morning sun and afternoon shade, and it would probably do really well. But it has really gorgeous color. I just really like the loose and kind of graceful growth habit of it. I think it makes for a really pretty and interesting specimen in the garden. And these here are $99, and they look like they're in about a 3-gallon container. They also have the dried corn stalks that we saw over at the Home Depot, and these here are the $24.98 bundle, and they have some decorative picks in them with the acorns as well as the foliage and a burlap type ribbon. And then there's also the smaller one that doesn't have any decor on it, and this bundle is $11.98. So if you're looking to do some fall decorating this weekend, they do have some here available. And for things like pumpkins, I do always like to visit a local farm, but if you don't have that available to you, then they do have some here. The small sugar pumpkins are $4.48, and then the medium pumpkins are $6.98. And when we get around the other side, I can see if they have any large ones. But you can see how pretty a pumpkin looks. An orange pumpkin with the foliage on the croton looks really cool. And they have some of the specialty pumpkins too, the ones that you can stack, that have those bumpy warts on them and the cool different colors, and these are $10.98 each. Now when you're done with your pumpkins, if you do have deer in your area, you can crack them and kind of put them in the woods. And last year I did that with my pumpkins, and the deer came and ate them, which was wonderful. That way it doesn't feel like a waste. You can use them as a food source for some of the wildlife. Check out these fun tattoo pumpkins that have a cute little face on them. Look at that. There's that one. And then these that have some sunflowers on them. Hello Fall. Really pretty. And these are real. And check out this beautiful display here with some mums and some pumpkins, even some coneflowers and millet. Now millet will send up these fuzzy kind of plumes, and they're just a really pretty dark foliage accent plant. They're in this decorative planter here for, let's see how much, $29.98. So a little bit pricey for an annual, but it does look really pretty. That is the type of blooms that they send up right there. You can kind of see, and they like full sun, and they're an ornamental grass. These are only an annual, so they will not come back next year, and they are cold tolerant, only to 32 degrees. So once you get your first frost, they will likely be done. But very pretty foliage plant for the fall. Very easy to grow from seed also. So if you wanted to try them from seed next year, something to think about. I have a friend who does it, and they always look really pretty this time of year. And some asters, which I actually just added to my garden this year. They have some in this really pretty lavender color, a bit of a deeper purple, as well as some pink. And these almost look like they are mini carnations from afar, don't they? So pretty. And I added some of these purple ones to a container with some dark foliage celosia and some coral bells, and they look really pretty. So this here is the Peter III hybrid aster. It likes full sun. It's a mounding perennial that blooms in end of summer, beginning of fall. And it is hardy to a zone 6, and it gets to be 18 to 24 inches in height and 18 to 24 inch spacing. These are water wise, which means they're a pretty drought tolerant plant once they are established. So they like to dry out a little bit between watering, and they do best in full sun with a well draining soil. Contrary to that is mums, which do like water. So if you are going to pick up some mums, this is the perfect stage to pick them up at, where there are a couple of open blooms so that you can see what color they are, but there are still lots of tightly budded buds, so that this will bloom for you in your garden. or in your containers or arrangements, because a couple of sunny days, this will open up really quickly. But mums do dry out pretty quickly and they like water. So you want to make sure to check for water every day. If you keep them in these containers, you'll probably need to water them daily. If you do plant them in a larger container, which with more soil, which will naturally contain more moisture, then you can probably do with a little bit less water. But in general, in order for them to stay nice and healthy and bloom pretty, they need water. And another really beautiful plant for late season interest that is so low fuss is sedum. All it needs is full sun and a soil that leans dry, and it is really happy. And at the end of the summer, beginning of fall, you'll get all these beautiful light pink blooms that the pollinators absolutely love. I have tons of bees on my sedum all of the time. And this is a plant that offers you a long season of interest, because even in the late winter, early spring, when they start to break dormancy and push through the soil, you get all these really pretty thick leaves of foliage in a neat little mound, and then they will start sending up their bloom stalks. And even when they're like this in tight bud form, they look really pretty, and then you get blooms that start to color up. So really great plant, and they're very hardy. So this here is the Autumn Joy Sedum, which is a very classic variety, and it gets to be anywhere from 18 to 24 inches in size. Yeah, 18 to 24 inch height, 18 to 24 inch width, hardy to a zone 3 or negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit. These are even great candidates for containers. Because they are so hardy, you can plant them in a container, and as long as the container is plastic or a frost-free material, you can keep them out all year, and they will come back for you year after year, which will save you money on planting annuals every year. So really great container plant as well as out in the landscape. And these are in the house brand container at Lowe's for $8.98. And here's what I'm picking up today. I'm going to grab 2 of these Timeless Night Coral Bells to use in some fall containers. Well, that brings us to the end of the September inventory here at Lowe's. I hope that you've enjoyed checking out what my store has in stock, and I hope that you can find some of these varieties near you. Thank you so much for spending your time with me, and I will catch you in the next one. Thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, please hit the thumbs up button, and please consider subscribing so you don't miss any of my future videos. And we'll see you soon.